Good afternoon, everybody. Can everyone online hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, because I can't see the comments now that I'm doing the things. So please note, if you put a comment in the chat, I will get to it after I'm finished the presentation. But if you want to verbally ask a question, you're also welcome to just sort of shout out. I am recording this for those of you who are camera shy and want to, turn off your cameras, that's fine. Steve was here a moment ago to welcome everyone and just walked away, so I apologize. So our session today is meant to be complementary in nature to the sessions held by the Provost's office during the month of January and February. And so our session is for all promotion and tenure tracks here. And so my goal is to sort of share with you a little bit of the how-tos and sort of some about the when you can do things and when you should be doing things. And then answering any questions you have. So my presentation is not going to take an hour. I want to leave lots of questions, room for questions that you might have. So we're going to go through timelines and calendars, the process in general, who does what, so the responsibilities. And then I have a link for a sample dossier that you're willing to sort of, or that I'm willing for you to sort of look through, and then we'll go through questions. So sometimes there's a question of when can I go up for promotion or tenure? And so the university is very explicit on the provost website that you should be going up typically at the beginning of your 6th year if you are not bringing in any time with you. So maybe you were a faculty member somewhere else and you negotiated that in your contract, or maybe you were a teaching assistant professor and you've moved to a tenure track line here, and so you're allowed to carry your time over towards tenure if you negotiated that at the time of your hiring for the tenure track position. So those are sort of where the deviations might happen to the standard going up at the end of the 6th year. If you aren't certain, again, I'll send out this website or the slides, but you can see here for those who started in 2020, they would be eligible to go up during this fall of the 2025-2026 year if they didn't come in with any time towards tenure. Promotion to full, you have to, so whether this is tenure or this is the clinical or teaching track, you have to serve at least 5 years as an associate before you can go up for promotion to full. And these two processes are slightly different. So we get in the dean's office a spreadsheet that says when folks should be going up for tenure. So the provost office provides that to us. Promotion to full, that is on you. It's your choice. So you could go up immediately when you're eligible. You could wait a year or two if you feel you need to do so for whatever reasons, personal or work related. And so then you initiate that discussion with your department chair to say, I want to go up for full. And then they notify the dean's office that you're going up. So it's not assumed that anyone wants to go from associate to full. And then there's a promotion and tenure calendar that is on the provost website as well. And so you can see here, although we say that you go up in fall, you do have a little bit of work to do here. Over the summer, you get external tenure track faculty get external reviews done on a sample of their scholarly materials. And so we learned last year that is not required for clinical promotions and for teaching promotions. External review is not required for those two, but it is required for tenure track promotions, and it is required for tenured associate to full. So you do see that there's a little bit of work, and I'll come back to this in a minute. There are deadlines set by each school and college for the fall, and those can be found on our College of Ed website. Whoops. Those can be found on our College of Ed website. There are some online instructions, and so I'm not going to click and go through all of these things right now. But if you're looking for links to instructions, this is currently where they're housed. If you go to our faculty resources page, under the promotion and tenure material, you'll see what our internal schedule is. And I'm going to walk through this. Well, maybe not. There we go. I'm going to walk through this. So you can see here that faculty, even though they were going up for tenure last fall, their materials were due in August 18th before classes started. And that tends to be the trend, the Friday before classes start. And then the department chair reviews, that you have a P&T committee, promotion and tenure committee in each department, and they review as well. There's a college level P&T committee, and then it goes to the dean. And so of course this documentation is from last year, so it says Dean Hill Clark, but for next year we'll update it with the new dean's name. And then the last sort of college level date here is you meet with the dean, and the dean will share with you what the recommendation is that they're putting forth to the provost office. Some of these materials you may need to get from, for the dossier, you may need to get from human resources. So for instance, if you don't have a copy of your offer letter, you can email facultyservices@memphis.edu. If you don't have a copy of your third year review material, so everyone should have had a third year review. It is required for tenure track and clinical and teaching tracks and research faculty, third year review. And you will get a letter is created and put in your folder that says what your department and department chair are saying in terms of your progress. If you need copies of those because you can't find it and your department chair can't find it, or maybe you have a new department chair, again, you can email faculty services to get those. Faculty evaluations, with the change in December to or in the fall to the newer looking seats, it's still all housed in the same place. So the same link that you're used to going to should work when you go up. Okay. So this process is a little bit about shared responsibility. So there's things that you as the applicant have to do, and the majority of the work is on you initially. There are things that happen at the department level and then at the dean's office. So you are required to create to upload files with these specific numbers and names to the OneDrive that is emailed to you by the dean's administrative assistant. So right now, Amy Wilson is in that role, and she emails you and says, sometime in the spring, and says, your folder is open, you can start uploading things. Way back on the second slide where there was the link to the provost website with instructions, they give you a little bit more information about what should be in each of these, but some of them are kind of obvious, like 4.1 is your university CV. So I know we all are not fond of completing that thing, but it is required for annual reviews, and so you should have, having completed an annual review in the year you're going up for tenure, you should have that up to date. Annual evaluations, you need both the ratings and comments. There is still a seat summary form. So although we are not doing seat summary forms for annual reviews anymore, thankfully, we are still doing a seat summary form when you go up for promotion. And so you'll be able to download that form and enter your seats. Yes.
With the seats that are in the norm, the changes in questions between the last several years since I've been here and then this year, is that reflective of that? Do we know yet, or is it going to be like two different things?
So the question here for those of you online was since the format of the seat has changed in that, we have expanded items and several items under each category for effective teaching, will the seat form look different? As of December, it was still this, and as of January, it was still the same looking form as last summer. It was dated last summer. I can't say what that form will look like moving forward if they're going to change it, but it currently only asks for one question number, your overall rating of effectiveness that's on there. And so that form does not have everything on there.
The only reason why I was asking the change because I have a number for what question that is. It's switched on.
Right.
Like ones, I think previously it was like 1 or 2, the new one is like question 9. So that's fine, as long as it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that it refers to the overall question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So as you can see, these are documents that you're going to create. Some of these, at the beginning here, you may need to go back for. Some of the things you may not have. So for instance, if you are going up for teaching, promotion for teaching, you aren't necessarily required, or clinical, you aren't necessarily required to have anything in any of these section 7 documents. But everyone is required to have, everyone is required to have a summary of teaching, and your teaching, and your seats evaluations. Okay. Again, you may not have internal or external instructional rated grants. If you're a research faculty, you don't create a blank document, you just leave it out of your folder. So on the back page here, we have service, outreach, advising, mentoring, administration. So basically anything that isn't research or teaching would go in this document. And any awards you've had. This part over here, 9.1, is really important. And I will show you an example of those momentarily. The list of supplemental materials are any materials that aren't previously listed as its own header. Additionally, you should be submitting any scholarly products that are like journal manuscripts, book chapters. For books, I don't think you have to submit the whole book. I think you just have to submit like the abstract from the book and the cover page, and the table of contents. But these are the things that are supporting, showing the quality and quantity of scholarly products that you've generated. Some people ask, should I upload all my conference presentations? And the answer is it doesn't hurt, especially if there was one that was like award-winning, but it isn't necessarily required. I know when I went up, I did not upload all my 50 some odd conference presentations that I had while I was here, because although those count towards tenure, in this idea that you've got a research thread that you're continuing to develop over the years, what again matter more than the conference presentations are the publications. So that there are 2 things that are generated by the department and put in your folder. One is a letter from your department chair, and one is a letter from your department promotion and tenure committee. So everyone who has tenure in the department will review for Tenure-Track folks. So no one who is an assistant is reviewing up here. And then again, I mentioned you'll be meeting with the department chair to get the feedback from the department about where they feel you are for tenure. The dean's office, the dean does write a letter, but it's not, you don't get a copy of that. you will meet with the dean after the dean reviews your materials. And for instance, when I met with Dr. Candy Hill Clark, she just read me a little passage of what she was going to say that was additional beyond what people had already said at the college, I mean, at the department level. Okay, so let me show you what a dossier looks like. Again, you'll get the slide with this link, and it's an open link on OneDrive, so you'll be able to see what it looks like. So you can see here, you'll get a OneDrive folder like this from Amy or whoever's the dean's administrative assistant, and you just create PDF files. Again, you have to use the numbering system that is in the instructions, the name of what they are. I put my name at the end of these files because you may not be the only one going up for promotion in your department, and you certainly aren't the only one going up for promotion when this stuff gets further up the line. And so it's just a handy thing to have your name at the end of everything. So let me show you about what I was talking about, that supplemental materials information. So here's my list of, this is just an example of supplementary materials. So list them. Yeah, that is really hard to see. Sorry. I don't know how to make that bigger here. Oh, there we go. Oops, now I've lost it. Okay, there we go. So it is just a list. See how I just have the citation for these fake things that I've created? That's all you put in this supplementary document. So it is a list of the additional files you're gonna have. So this is labeled 9.1, and all the additional files you're going to create are 9.2. So I should then be able to get back to this website, and you can see, well, you can't really see here, I'm sorry, because of how I'm showing you OneDrive. But right here, this is supplementary materials, my name. I tend to put the author name of what it is and then something else so that it's easily identifiable. But again, this name should sort of match some of what you had in that list. Again, here you can see this is, I wrote book chapter at the end to distinguish book chapter from a journal manuscript. So
we should have 9.2 and then the unique name for it. We should do like 9.2, A, 9.2 B, like that.
Right. So the question here was, do you want us to put 9.2 A, B, C? No, just 9.2, so that when these files are sorted, they go and they line up in the right way with the name supplemental materials, and then the distinct uniqueness of the file can be in the name off to the right. Okay, and so again, you'll have this link, and so you can look at this. These are all just really empty Word documents. I just wanted to give you an example of what content should be in them without it actually being like my real documents from when I went up. Okay, so I am going to, I think that was the last slide. Yep. So obviously you have my email and Steve's email, and we'll be here through at least July 1. And so we are certainly happy to answer any questions up to that point. And then in the transition, I'm going to stop sharing and see if you all have questions that are specific to anything you might have heard at the sessions you attended, if you went to the other sessions, or anything that you wanted to ask that I haven't answered yet.
One more logistic question with the file thing, and the other one is more from the college meeting on Friday. The logistic question is, if I remember correctly from mid-tenure, you all don't want any sort of folders, correct? You want them all individual files, right?
Right. Okay. That's a good question. So the question here was, do we want to see files in that folder? Do you want to, in essence, do you want people to create subfolders? And the answer is no. There should not be any subfolders. Things should be numbered just the way they are on the instructions.
And then my second one, from what we heard on Friday, obviously the panel is kind of a mixed bag, a lot of people from all over the colleges. So is there any guides or comments from you or Dr. Sanskis about the, I don't know, essentially the style or content that you would prefer me or not be in narratives? Because that was kind of, from them, there was kind of a little bit all over the place of what they were saying. Put in narratives and not put in narratives, because you had everybody from people over at CFA to, you know, things like that. So just trying to know if there's anything that we should be making sure we put there or don't put there.
That's a good question. So the question, if you didn't hear it, was, should the, when you write your statement for teaching and for research or scholarly products, and your statement for service, advising, mentoring, administration, should it be in narrative form or bullet form? And I'm just going to say that right now I don't know who's incoming, and that there is a preference. Historically, most people have submitted a narrative in the college, from what I've seen since I've sat on committees since I got tenure. However, one thing I do suggest for your scholarly product statement is including a one-page summary that says something like bullet points, number of book chapters, number of journal manuscripts, number of conference preceding papers that were peer-reviewed, number of conference presentations, number of invited presentations to outside organizations. And so all that might kind of get lost in your narrative, but having the last page be this nice summary is definitely helpful. And especially when we go to write your letters, we can pull right from that and say, okay, they said there were 50 international conferences, there were 14 of this, and it's real easy for us to write those letters when you have the numbers summarized for us somewhere. Not, you know, I have this research topic, it led to 4 publications. I have this research topic, and we have to go through and add up. So a summary page for the scholarly products, you know, whether they're research-oriented scholarly products or whether they are teaching-oriented scholarly products. So you might write, I don't know that this exists, but we have a journal in statistics called Teaching Statistics, and it's a peer-reviewed journal. And if I wrote something for that that's teaching-oriented, I should put it in my dossier. And especially for those of you who are on clinical and teaching tracks, if you're writing those kind of articles, you should be making sure that those are in your statement and that they are included in 9.1 and 9.2.
It's about 2 pages or so to put like the narrative links, because they were throwing out some numbers to us over there in that meeting.
Yeah. So the question is about what length are we looking for the narratives? And I was told 2 to 3 pages, and that is what is actually sort of listed in the directions, is sort of this number of 2 to 3. I would say 3 is sort of the limit, plus maybe that one summary page for the research scholarly products. Do you guys online have questions? Sorry, Patrick over here is asking everything he had in his mind and just dumping questions over here.
So Leah, I have a question.
Yes.
So, and I've been trying to look at it, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that all of the numbering from the mid-tenure review carries over to your forward. Does it make sense? So are we gonna have to, are there any changes in how the numbering is for the sections between
Yes.
mid-tenure review? There is. Okay, what are those?
So the good news is that anyone who is just going through mid-tenure review this year and years forward, your numbers will match, but they changed the numbering. So I can't, I think Eli, when you went through, it was a different set of numbering. It
Okay,
used
so
to
just
go
look at the
from
new
1 to
numbering.
10. Yeah, just get, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it was from 1 to 10 before, and now it is from 1 to 9.
okay,
And it's, and it was an early file that's no longer there. I think it was like number 3 or something. And so, yes, so your research statement used to be 7 and now it's 6. And so,
so the question I have then is, would we need to go back to our mid-tenure review files and renumber them? Because we submit that as part of our tenure application.
no. So
Okay.
your files from mid-tenure review are not in this folder for your tenure dossier.
Okay.
Your tenure dossier is a blank OneDrive folder. You are starting from scratch. So that's why for the mid-tenure session, we always tell faculty, save all your documents so
Right.
that you already have them there, because you won't ever get access to that folder again or the contents of that folder. So you'll be starting from scratch. So yeah, you'll need to upload everything that you had already uploaded to from mid-tenure.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions?
I have questions, but I know I'm very early in the process.
If no one else has questions online, Madeline has a few, if you guys.
I've got a question. I'm just wondering if, I know there's some conversations about peer institutions. Is there an official list of peer institutions or maybe an unofficial one that just makes the rounds?
So, so the best way to think of it is I believe, and I'll have to check with Janet on this, I believe that we have a list of research peer institutions that is generated by Research and Innovation, the Office of Research and Innovation. And I believe that that is what what we theoretically are working off of. But that's not to say that your letters couldn't come from somewhere else. So for instance, University of Minnesota is not a peer institution for us, but when I gave my names, I knew someone who was there and who was a full professor in a similar role to mine here, who's had not multiple NSF grants. And so really that's what matters more, is that they're grant productive and they're in a doctoral granting institution. So whether Minnesota's R1, whether you call them peer to us or not, I mean, I think we tend to think of ourselves as way more urban than Minneapolis is, for various reasons. But that's not to say you can't have someone you're really shooting for someone who, for Tenure-Track, you want someone who is research productive in the ways that would get tenure at our institution, and that is at an R1. But again, I'll ask. I'll see if I can find it. And if I can't find it, then I'll get Janet to help me. I know that there was last fall a list generated of these are what we consider our research peer institutions. And so that's a safe bet to work around.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not to speak on the chart, but like, I know the faculty senate, with the budget committee side of stuff, have been trying to figure that out, and it's a conversation that's been going back and forth for the last semester and change to try to guarantee that, but that may be different. I think that may be different. With the research.
Oh, thank you. So Anna found a list online. Here we go. List of peer institutions. Yeah. And so, right. And so OIR and Research and Innovation are the ones who sort of generated this list. Now, I'd be really careful, because when you look down here at THEC institutions, Middle Tennessee State is not R1. You cannot have a letter from them if you, because they're not R1. Again, teaching and clinical faculty don't need external letters when they go up for promotion at either promotion to associate or to full. It's just research faculty, but Middle Tennessee is an R2, and so they would not be a good place for you to try and get a letter. So the ones up here that say great cities, and aspirational, and current are the ones you want to focus on, because these are all our ones. Thank you, for finding that, Anna. Oh, Dustin has his hand up. I'm sorry. Okay, Dustin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry that you can't see me. For some reason, my camera's not working. I don't know why, but you're not missing much. My question is, so if we have if in our contract, it says that we are 50% teaching, 25% research and 25% service. Is there some sort of like schematic that is that standard in the College of Ed? Let me just ask. And secondly, is there some sort of schematic that helps us with, you know, figuring that out? That's kind of one of my things that because for a long, I was thinking it was 40, 40, 20, and then I looked and I was like, oh, actually, it's more teaching for Tenure-Track.
So I'll be honest that each program can sort of negotiate when they're hiring someone as to what those percentages would look like. And those percentages for your first year might look different if you have a course release, right? So maybe your first semester here, you had a course release, so you taught one fewer class. We often do that for incoming tenure-track faculty. It's pretty common across multiple institutions. But let's say maybe you also had are on an NSF grant, and so you have bought out a course, so then that changes your percentage. So there is nothing standard across the college for percentages. It's partially what the position was written as for the programs, and then your percentages again might change each year. You know, maybe one semester you got bought out by an NSF grant, and that only happened in year 2, but in year 4, you're on an NIH grant now, and that bought out 2 courses from one semester. And so your narrative should say something like, on average, I taught X number per academic semester, and then note any exceptions so that people are clear about what your role was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I was just rereading my original contract because when I talked to people verbally, they mentioned that it would start off that way because I had a 1-2 load that first year, but it never changed additionally. And so I'm just assuming that it carries on, because when I was looking at the actual documentation the other day, it said unless you have renegotiated with your chair, I guess. So
Right.
is that like, or is that written in your yearly evaluation?
So whatever was in your offer letter contract is what you start with. But again, yes, if you get an NSF grant and it's 3 years long, 3 years, last 3 years, you know, you could essentially you're renegotiating because your department chair has said, yes, you're allowed to have a course reduction while you're on that grant. But nothing gets put in writing at that point. You don't get a new contract that says anything.
I see.
So
Okay, that's kind of where I was perplexed. Thank you.
okay, so I'm gonna let Madeline ask her question because she's been patiently waiting here while I was trying to make sure I got to folks online.
That's okay.
You should know.
You had a question.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Jeannie wrote in, is advising teaching or service? Yes,
Yay.
it is both. So when you have students who are enrolling in directed readings with you because they're your advisees, or maybe somebody else's advisees that you're co-chairing with, or if you have them enrolled in dissertation hours with you, you list that under teaching. So every year when I do my evaluations, I list my real course numbers, and then I list EDPR 9000, dissertation, 3 hours, how many students I had registered for 3 hours, how many students I had for 1 hour registered, because they can register for in the past few years, they've come out with this new thing that doctoral students can register for 1 credit of dissertation hours and still be considered full-time. So I do have some students who drop down to 1 hour at some point to make that work financially. So that you put under teaching, the course numbers, but then yes, under service, I list number of advisees that I'm chairing. I also list number of committees I'm sitting on, because you are still giving feedback to that person. And you may be, depending on, you know, if you're the content area specialist for that topic, you may be spending way more time with that student than any other dissertation committee member. So don't be afraid to sort of break down your list under service by category. So I have chair / co-chair, methodologist, and other committee, just an additional committee member. Because I want to show the differentiation of the amount of work I'm doing for different students. Eli?
Yes, I have another question about the list of peer
Mhm.
external reviews. So when you develop that list, is it, and I apologize if you've said this already, but do you what do you provide? Do you provide additional information about why you are recommending those? Right. So let's say I say George Engelhard, University of Georgia. Do I say this is why I've picked this person, or why I think this is a good external reviewer for me?
So if you have multiple, and I'm sorry, I keep leaning this towards research, but this is where it's sort of applicable the most. If you have multiple lines of research, for instance, so I have instrument development research that I do, but I also had research related towards undergraduate STEM education. And so I created a subheader that indicated that these would be good reviewers for this content, I mean, for this field, and this would be good for that field. And so you know, giving context like that, you know, is helpful, I think, for the department chair and the committee when they're trying to generate a list of names, because sometimes if your contacts aren't available, the department chair will go back to some tenured faculty in your department who would be serving on the promotion and tenure committee and say, all right, can you help me generate a list of names of people to get letters from, because I'm having a hard time getting letters. And so it's often helpful, I think, if you break that down so that people realize, oh, I need one person in this field, I need one person in that field, and make it easier for the department chair. The other thing I did to be sort of transparent, you know, these could be people you've interacted with at conferences, or should have interacted with conferences. And so they may or may not know your name already, and they may or may not know you well. It's okay if they know you well. You just can't, like the majority of the list, you're allowed one person who is a prior collaborator. The rest have to be people you've never been on a grant with, you've never been on a journal manuscript before, and you've never been on a conference presentation with before. So you haven't generated any scholarly work with them in any way, or you haven't designed a course with them before. And so I was transparent and said, I have never collaborated with this person, but I am Facebook friends and LinkedIn, and, you know, a connection on LinkedIn. Just so people don't come back and say, oh, well, you're Facebook friends or you're LinkedIn friends, this means you have an existing substantial relationship. Nope, we just move in the same circles, and I was indiscriminate about who in statistics education I accepted friend requests from before I got picky later on. Okay, Madeline, what's your question?
My basic question, at my prior institution, even though I'm a tenure-track faculty member, they allowed for submission of creative materials that were related to your research line, and I want to ask, what was the opinion of the helpfulness or unhelpfulness of that?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so could you all hear Madeline's question?
I think I'm loud, but not quite loud.
No.
No. Okay. So the question was, is it helpful to submit scholarly materials that are not necessarily research-oriented materials? And I would say yes. So again, I mentioned there's the scholarship of teaching and learning. So if you're writing a paper that is about sort of best practices for teaching a particular content, I mean, there's no reason that shouldn't count towards tenure. It's your bigger package of what you're doing and you're spending your time on. Now, not everything should look like that because you're tenure track. But I would say you want to give the most holistic picture of how you spent your time here in your dossier. So anything that's sort of like that, or even you know, there wasn't a student network for XYZ on the university, but you helped create one and you helped run an evaluation program, an evaluation of it. Well, then yes, if that became a journal article, then yes, you should be including that as well. Again, this holistic picture of teaching, service, and research for tenure track, and then teaching and service for clinical and teaching assistant. You know, you want those pieces in there.
This was something that my next question is about, like, how much emphasis do you put on like authorship order and like impact factor of journals? So that was something that on Friday there was obviously variable opinions on. Like the person from, I think, Fogelman was like, we have a list of journals and I can only publish those. I was like, whoa, better ask.
Okay, so in the college we don't have a list, and as of right now we don't have a list in CEPA. And I think that, you know, within our college we all publish in different types of journals, and so there probably, when you go up, still won't be a standard list of journals, because our research and teaching is so diverse. You know, more so diverse than the College of Business, and you know, in types of journals. So we might be publishing in some psychology journals. You might have people who are publishing in medical journals with, you know, in our college. And so I think that those are reasonable places. And there isn't a list, and I think that there won't be a list for CEPA, at least, because of the diversity of what people are working on.
So given that, is there attention paid to like impact factors and stuff like that for where you do end up publishing?
So you have to, or you should be including a list of that for your a list that has each article and the authorship and what you did for your authorship. And under that is where I put the impact factor, or if it's not ranked. So there are multiple journals in statistics education, but there's only one research journal in statistics education, but it is not indexed anywhere. And so we went and got the rejection rate, acceptance rate, and used that in lieu of the impact factor. So it's more important that it's a highly respected and possibly the main journal for research in your particular little niche of a field. That's what we're really looking for. And authorship, it's fine to have, of course you want a good number of first author, but it is fine to be second author or third author. I had a research team that I worked with that, you know, we would just trade off this paper, you're first, this paper, you're second. And so, you know, in the end, there was 3 of us and we'd each get about a third of them as first author and then rotate second and third. And so that's perfectly understandable. I think the concern is where you're always third or last and never any first. That's where a concern would be. And with that said, the other thing you should also be including, and for you all online to hear this too, when you have students who publish dissertations and you are a author on that manuscript, that goes in your dossier. So that goes on your list, submit it. You spent time on that research with that student, as an advisor or a methodologist, or the content area specialist that they really spent lots of time developing the context and whatever, maybe an intervention for, you spent time on that. And so that those manuscripts should be listed as, you know, as publications and put in there.
Do you need to clarify?
Yes.
The chair methodology.
Yeah. So sort of like I said, you'd have a Word document with the citation and write like, as first author, I did XYZ. You have underneath that student's dissertation citation. With the journal information, you know, I was the chair of this dissertation. I assisted with blank, 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 blank. But yeah, but make sure to include those dissertations that you have worked with students on, especially if there was a substantial amount of work getting it from the dissertation phase to the publication phase. Is it? Okay. Are there any other questions online? No. Okay, well, again, we'll have this recording up as soon as I can get it to Parker, and we'll send out the link to the recording. We'll send out the slides so you have all the links to the pages that I mentioned. And again, if you are going up this fall and you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself and Steve. We are here to answer any questions. We are here to help. You know, and I'm not saying that whoever comes in the fall won't be, but we don't know who that is yet. So, so as your interims, we are happy to help in the interim. All right. All right, in that case, well then, thank you, and I hope to see you around the building.